Hello, and thank you everyone for joining us. Just give us a couple minutes. We're just going to wait probably about another minute or so for people to join, and then Thiago will take it away.
Okay, let's get started here. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar from TriStar. My name is Thiagu Palaniappan, Senior Applications Engineer at TriStar. Today's topic is going to be Creo 7.0 overview, mainly the core enhancements, including the big multi-body enhancement, right? We have been doing quite a few Creo 7 webinars, and today we thought of focusing on the core enhancements as well as the multi-body enhancement here. So a quick introduction about myself. I'm a mechanical engineer. I've been using the PTC solutions for the last 24 years. Started with the Pro Engineer revision 16 back in '96. Was in the industry for a good part of my career. Currently working as a senior applications engineer at TriStar, right? Some of you who are not familiar with TriStar, that you may be familiar with, but those who are not, let me take a quick minute. Here we are a company that specializes in helping manufacturing companies adopt software systems and processes to enable better and more efficient product development, right? Before we begin and talk about the agenda here, real quick, there's a handout section in the go-to webinar area where you should be able to download a PDF that's more going through some of the capabilities of the new Creo design packages. So I would encourage you to take a look at that during the presentation or later on. All of you are muted during the presentation, but feel free to start typing in your questions in there during the meeting, and I'll try my best to answer all those questions as much as I can towards the end. And if we are unable to answer it, or if we are running out of time, we'll always get back to you individually after this presentation, okay? So with that said, just real quick here, like I said, TriStar is a leading PLM company, and we are experts in CAD, data management, PLM, and product development, and we are the largest value-added reseller for PTC products worldwide. We are headquartered in Phoenix, Arizona, and we do have our team spread out in the United States and Canada, right? We also, help our customers by providing tailored solutions, right? By understanding your business initiatives, how you design and manufacture products, how you share data within the enterprise. So other than the regular PTC products, we also provide tailored solutions to help design and work smarter, right? Before I go through the agenda real quick, some of the promotions that we are running through the end of September. If you're interested to know more about this, please reach out to your account representatives or just visit tristar.com to know more about these time-limited offers. So the agenda here is just to go over mainly the enhancements, the core areas that all of you are currently using, right? Some of you may be in Creo 4, 5, or 6. So I thought of going through the key Creo 7 enhancements, mainly like in the bread and butter areas of Creo, like the sketcher, part modeling, and assembly, maybe in Weld Design, sheet metal, surfacing, detailing, what have you, right? And then we'll also go over a big enhancement they did in this release, which is multi-body design. The multi-body design was a huge improvement in Creo 7.0, so we will cover that too, all right? And towards the end, have a Q&A session where I'll try to answer your questions as much as I can. Just to give you a high-level overview here on the different areas that PTC improved in 7.0. So Creo 7.0, as many of you know, got released mid-April, right around April 14th timeframe. And moving forward, PTC is going to go with a yearly release cycle. Many of you may know that. So all the way from augmented reality to toolkit and in between sheet metal design, core areas, surface modeling, detailing, including some new exciting technologies that they have with the Frustum-based AI, topology optimization or Creo simulation live, flow analysis, right? Across the board, you could see, enhancements done in different areas, right? All the way from usability and functional improvements. And we have been running several of these webinars, and today, we thought of focusing on the core areas, and later on in August we'll be running a different one where we'll focus more on those exciting new technologies as well. Okay. And just an FYI, this webinar will be recorded, so you'll be able to look at the recording since I'll be covering a lot of information in quick time here. I'll be switching between the slides and the software as I explain these enhancements. So starting with the sketcher itself, as you know, PTC has been enhancing the basic sketch mode for quite a while, right from Creo 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and now in 7, they have a better visualization in the sketcher. Like if you see the constraints that we are all used to where you capture design intent, right? You see how it says bubbles now where you can add a little bit of background color or line color, right? So all those are, let me just zoom in here. You can see that's kind of how constraints will look like, and you can customize it. And cursoring over any of the entities will tell you why or what is that constraint controlling, including dimensions, right? They've also, have a default line width increased now. There's a config option sketcher line width you can use to control. The mirror tool has been enhanced, right? So remember, until Creo 6, if you need to mirror something inside of Creo 6.0 or prior to that, you always had to sketch a center line, and now finally you can just go with sketched lines or projected geometry or model edges or even construction geometry. You no longer have to sketch a center line to mirror it, right? I thought that was long overdue. I thought it's been there for a long time. So, and you have config options to lock that symmetry axis if required, So a few nice other config options, right? When you do an edit, do you want to see the constraints or not, etc., right? You can see overall the visualization, right? It's a lot better, right? Thicker lines, default lines, and all this can be customized. I'll show you in the demo here. And one nice improvement in Sketcher, one last one here, is the snapping, right? I've always seen when I work on some complex geometry where I have a lot of hidden geometry, the system tries to snap to everything that it wants and whatever I'm near it, right? So they have a nice option now where you could say turn off instant snapping and it will prevent that. So let's take a quick look at these enhancements that I just talked about. So first is I do have Creo 7 open here. If I go do a quick edit definition, and you could see the way constraints are showing up now, right? They change depending on the background color also, but you could see how it's a lot more apparent, the constraints, right? And those little tiny balloons or bubbles, if you want to call it, right? And all those can be controlled. I mean, I can just go to my options, and they got the entity display, wherein you're able to go and even, they give you a little preview and set it all the way here. I've set it here, but the default is, somewhere around here actually. Right, and you can save that. It saves it to your config.ui file, right? You can change the background color, the line color, etc. Right? So I've just set it to a certain value. Now, the nice thing is as I hover over those constraints, it kind of tells me that what is this controlling, right? These two lines are symmetric off of the center lines, or even a dimension. What is that really controlling? It's highlighting it. It's a lot better. Before we had to, kind of select it, right click and do an explain. You still have that good old thing. It'll tell you, highlighted entities or tangent, etc. But it's nice that as I hover over it, it tells you, right? So that's nice. Some couple of good improvements I thought on the Sketcher side. The next thing is, let's see here. If I open up a different model, the mirroring, right? So instead of sketch, let's say I have another sketch here real quick here. Let me just hide the constraints maybe a little bit. So I might want to, mirror these two guys, right? These two slot shapes in there, and I want to quickly do a mirror. And I could select the line now. Before you couldn't, you had to sketch center line. So if I go mirror and I'm able to select, it kind of tells you right here, any entity, an edge or a curve or anything to mirror about, right? A straight edge, of course, right? And then there it goes. And now when I change that, that's not locked, as you can see by default, but if you prefer locking, there's again a config option for that, right? I could just go to your sketcher here, and I could just say, right in here, lock the axis of symmetry, right? Again, if I cursor over it, it should tell me what is that config option, right? There's a config option called Sketcher Lock Symmetry Axis, and that's by default, it's turned off, right? Okay. So if I have to turn that on, if I turn that on, right, then it'll lock this, and I wouldn't be able to move it, right? So let me undo whatever I did here. If I go into my Sketcher options and I say I want to lock that symmetry axis, I'm not going to say my config here. And now if I do the same thing, what's going to happen. If I go, I want to just mirror it and do it off of this. And now can you see there's a little lock symbol? The lock symbol itself is not new, right? It's been there for a while in Creo and Wildfires. It's just that it's automatically doing it now. I shouldn't be able to move it. I cannot move this guy here. However, I can change this. Of course, I can just set it to a smaller value and move it up that way, but it's locked, right? So there it is, right? And I can show, entity, locked entity display, and it'll kind of highlight any entities that you've locked and all that good stuff, right? So let me just cancel out of this one here. One last thing in the sketcher is the ability to control your snapping. I really like this one, right? It's not a very complicated model here. I just put together a simple pattern around it, like a fill pattern. And so let's say my design intent is to sketch something on this face, right? I'm gonna sketch on this, and let's say I start sketching a simple line. As I start to sketch, as you can see, it's starting to snap to things that I don't need. Now I can hold on the shift key and I can avoid that, but if our customers wanted something wherein it'll only snap to visible geometry instead of hidden geometry. If I go to my hidden line options, you see there's so many hidden line geometry, or those holes or those curves, and that's what it's trying to go to the end, the center of that. And so now they have a nice little option, snap setting here in the right click, called instant snapping, right? Snapping itself was introduced in Creo 4. Many of you may know that. It's pretty powerful, right? You can just go you can just visit any entity even without selecting a reference, and it'll pick it up, it'll project it, or you can use the alt to grab geometry. But now they're kind of further refining it. It's helpful, I thought. You still want me to, I like the snapping, however, not instant snapping. So when I do that delay, right, when I say uncheck that instant snapping, and let's say I start sketching a line now, it's a lot easier, and you see how there's a delay, and then it lights up that visible jump. It doesn't care about the others in between, right? So it's a little bit better, I think. I can just, again, go back, and it's more like you just wait for it, hover over it, and then you sketch it, so for example, I just did a quick one there. So again, you can also access that in your snap settings up here. So if I go to setup, snap settings, right in here, instant snapping. I think it's a nice little tool, I thought, that they introduced in. So not a whole lot, but, a couple of effective ones, I thought, on the sketcher side. On the core modeling, right, drafts, if, many of you may do castings and forgings, and, draft is a huge, it's been improved for a long time in Creo 5. PTC allowed drafting surfaces that have adjacent rounds and chamfers. Remember, the best practice used to be do the draft first and then the rounds and the chamfers, right? Because it didn't work before. And I would still stick with that best practice, but let's say you had an imported geometry, or the design department forgot to add the required draft. Now with Creo 7, you're able to do a recognition of a draft on cones and ruled surfaces. So when I create the draft feature and select a draft hinge in a surface, it understands what is the current angle. It gives you that angle, and you can modify that. Very helpful for imported models as well as existing Creo models where you don't want to go back and reorder things, etc. Right? So let's take a quick look at that one too here. So if I go to, let's see, I'm going to open a model first, a different one here. There it goes, right? So for example, if I want to just draft this surface, right? And I say that's my draft hinge. This is a big enhancement in Creo 5. It's nothing new in 6 or 7, right? This being Creo 5 itself. See how under the hood, PTC is really using flexible modeling extension technology, right? It's not that you need a license for it, but that's what is happening under the hood. getting rid of the rounds and the chamfer, doing the draft and adding it back on. And that's a big improvement that they did in Creo 5.0, right? So there it is. I'm able to draft that there, right? That is something that was there. If I go grab multiple surfaces, for example, here, right? Let's just say I want to get these guys in here, and I want to go, let's say I want to do a draft and use this as a hinge. It's still able to go through all those surfaces, and I can, I no longer have to use this dashboard at the top. Just, in Creo 6, they have everything in your, literally in your mouse cursor, right? I just do a left click, not even do a right click, and I could say, don't propagate it, right? And that way, it's just going through this. Now, when I add an angle, right, it's giving you an angle, but the problem is this surface, I don't like that deformation, right? This is why we used to do rounds later on. And I could just say, just lock that, prevent inline rounds from deforming, and that's it, right? Now, this is nothing new in 7. It's been there since Creo 5.0. Some of you may be using 4 or 3. That's when I showed you this. But what's new in 7.0 is they went a little bit further than that, what they did in 5. And they added this capability to recognize draft. So as you can see, I have a part here. It could be an imported model, as you can see, right? And I'm going to just say draft. When I do a draft, it's almost like saying, I don't have to create a draft. Can you see if there's a draft angle here based on this hinge? It is telling me there's a 5-degree draft all around. So essentially, it's recognizing the draft, allowing me to change it, right? So maybe I want to go with, I don't know, a 10-degree draft in here, and there it goes, right? And I've added that, right? So that's pretty easy. And then maybe this one is a little more complex. There's a lot more geometry here. Let's see if it can identify that, right? Again, I'm going to go draft. I select this as my hinge. And based on that hinge and that surface, it's literally saying that there is a 3-degree, took a little bit here, right? It took a second or two, if you remember. And what it's doing is identifying those adjacent rounds and chamfers. Very, very powerful, right? Compared to back in the days where we would have to do all those first and then do the rounds. It's a big improvement. Very, very useful, I think. And I can just change that to maybe like a larger angle, for example, here, right? I've changed it to a larger angle. It's almost like it's removing that round. But I have options to remove that round. And you could say, don't create those rounds, right? I could even say, get rid of those rounds, etc. Right? So pretty nice tool. Now, those are all constant draft angles, and that was easy. What happens if I select a geometry that is not constant? For example, over here, right, I have different angles in here, it looks like. So let's say I want to do the same thing here, right? I want to go identify the draft, and that's my hinge. It identified the 35-degree angle, which makes sense. But now I'm going to go to my draft surfaces, and I'm adding additional ones. As soon as I added a second surface, which is a different angle, the system tells you it's 0 degree, which makes sense, right? It's kind of it's a variable one, so it's kind of going back and saying, okay, I'll give you 0 degree, and it's up to you to change to whatever you want. So moving forward, starting 7.0, please remember this is not just for creating a draft; it's also for recognizing existing draft angles and modifying them from there, right? So it's a pretty nice tool, I thought, that they introduced in 7.0. So not a whole lot in part modeling. That's pretty much in part modeling, right? I mean, there's one important one, obviously, which is the accuracy. We all know the importance of absolute accuracy versus relative accuracy, right? During my industry days, whenever I use data sharing features or in manufacturing modules where I need a reference model, another model, right? I'll have to, or even in simulation sometimes where I'm trying to mesh in a large assembly, I'll have to, tweak these accuracies, right? The default until Creo 6, when you create an empty model, used to be relative accuracy, and now moving forward, PTC is going to have it as absolute accuracy. Now, this doesn't change anything for existing customers. Your admin has already set you up with a start part that already has its relative accuracy, but let's say without any setup, you create a new part in Creo, you'll get a choice of, absolute accuracy start part or relative accuracy start part. This one, the bottom one, used to be the old default, right? So the reason they did that is mainly they're getting into multi-body design, and I'll talk about it towards the end of the presentation. That multi-body design is very, very useful, where this could be a huge advantage there, right, when you do multi-body design. So that's kind of why where you're using multiple bodies. And so again, existing customers, you'll be fine, and they've gotten rid of that enable absolute accuracy a config option. You no longer have to set in a config option. You say file new part, right? If I uncheck the default, you see you're getting absolute is the default, relative, and you can set it in your configs as to which one you want, but there it is, right? It's the absolute accuracy. If I go to my properties, and go to the accuracy. Before we had a config option that would switch between absolute and relative, right? So it's already there defined now. You no longer need that old config there, right? So, okay, so that's another, that's just one of those part modeling or the core modeling areas, right? A few other things like, import data doctor, those who work on like, files from non-Creo files, there's a PTC has had this import data doctor for a long time where you can go interrogate that model with those surfaces, and now it gives you some better troubleshooter checks, right, for a solid node with open quills, right, and the model tree will list bodies. So let's say there's a SolidWorks design that has multiple bodies. It can bring in the body and it'll highlight the quills inside the body. And also, when you do additive manufacturing, for example, and create lattice structures, for example, you could just have a little display option now to say, show me the mixed model, or just show me the boundary rep or the B-rep model, right? So it allows you to control the visibility of these lattice structures. Very useful when you do additive manufacturing or topology optimization, where you're creating non-B-rep geometry, and in the process of doing that, it kind of highlights that, right? So pretty useful tool, I thought. For example, if I have a design like, let's see here, this, if I open up this model here, right, you can see what I've done is I have a lattice structure, right? There it is, right? That's my lattice structure. So within your toolbar now, right, in your graphics toolbar, they have this new geometry display filters. That's new, where you could say, I want to just show only no B-rep, right? Don't show me B-rep geometry, or show me the mixed one, right? So that's kind of the internal body that I have where I added those lattice structures. And you also have transparency settings and all that you can turn on, right? So a couple of good ones there on the part modeling side, I thought. Now let's move on here. On the welding, right? So some of you, I'm sure most of you are doing welding or taking advantage of the welding application inside of Creo assembly mode. So there's been an issue in Creo 4. We had introduced, or PTC introduced, the ability to make a solid welds, which is very helpful for mass property calculations and also in simulation softwares like Creo Simulate. But we used to have issues around these type of corners in there as to how it's kind of blending in there, and there are better handling it now. Geometry is calculated better when you do welding now. So for example, if I go back to, if I just show you a quick weld example here, that's, so if I go, I have an assembly here, and if I go to welding, right, no add-on license required. It's in the base package. You remember, we were just talking about the core capability here, so all of you should be able to do it. And when I go into welding, right, I might want to just do, let's see here, let's say a fillet weld between this surface, and I go to the side 2, and I select the surface, and I'm going to just set it to, let's say, size 2. Now, in Creo 4.0, they introduce a solid weld. You can assign mass properties and, material, and, it's not only is representing it, it's also could be used for weld stress calculations in a simulation environment, right? That's the advantage there. So I just, did that solid, and there it goes. The advantage of doing this in the 3D model versus the 2D drawing is you're not spending your time creating those symbols, and it's representing it, right? Somebody looking at this model knows, okay, when I drill this hole, okay, there's a weld in there, or, it's representing. So it's a good practice to create that in the 3D assembly mode itself, right? Now, there are other types too, right? You could add like a plug weld or a slot weld, for example, and say, maybe you select these as side surfaces, for example. I want to go with these, there it goes, right? Or maybe I want to do an intermittent weld, right? I want to do a fillet weld here, but then let me just go to side 2, and we'll just set up some size in here, and let's set it to a solid weld. But then this time I'm going to go set it to an intermittent weld, and I can control those the size of that. Maybe control the distribution, right? Is going to be center to center, etc. And there it goes, right? So again. The advantage is you're representing it accurately as in the real world, and you're not spending time in the 2D drawing creating those symbols, right? That's the biggest advantage there, right? You can even do like welds, like for example, I want to do a square butt weld here, and maybe want to just holding shift and then snapping to it. All those typical things that you do in Creo, right? Whenever you hold shift, you're able to snap to something there, go to the second chain. Quite easy to use. The usability is something they've always been improving, right? Many of these have been there for a long time. I'm not showing you anything new here. It's already been there for a while. I go to the solid option here, and let's set it to the size 3, and there it goes, right? So like that, we can keep adding welds, and that was introduced in Creo 4, the solid weld, but welding itself has been there for a long time. Now, specifically, we had an issue with in the old in Creo 6 and prior, situations like this, right? How do they handle it, right? So if I go to my welding, and if I say I want to go and add a fillet weld, and when I do a fillet weld, and if I go side 2, and I say that's my side 2, this one and this one here, and I'm going to just specify a size of, let's say, 2 units right in there, and I'm going to go to options, and I say solid weld, and you see how it is able to handle that geometry, unlike before where it used to fail. The surface weld used to work, but it used to fail there. It's able to handle it better. So there are more improvements expected in this area, but so that's if you go to fillet weld, and if I go to the side 2, and I say that side 2 is this, right? And I can keep adding additional surfaces here, or maybe go to side 1 and keep adding additional surfaces in here, and then give it a specific size. And then I want to go to the solid weld, right, etc. And it's able to handle it much better than it used to be before, right? So hopefully some of you could take advantage of it if you do these, if you do welding, if you want to show welding in your 3D assemblies. Now, sheet metal design, one quick enhancement here, for those who use form features, whether it's a quilt form, punch form, or a die form, what you're able to do now is you can control the shear, right? You could say you have an option to trim the edges of the sheared form. So when you have a form like this, right, the deformation that you see at the very end, Creo 6 is this on the left, Creo 7, you have an option to control that. So what do I mean by that is maybe if I could quickly show an example. I had I use a punch. I could have done the sketched form itself, but there is a form feature that I've done, as you can see, right? Simple form feature there, and you can see the side surface there, right? It's going beyond the boundary, and if I go and do a flattened form, for example, right? I want to go and do a flattened form on this, and you can see that orthogonal geometry is not there in there, and so this is when I could just, now in Creo 7, you have a quick option here under options. You could just say trim the edges of the sheared form, and you see immediately, right, with that, without that, and with it, you see the difference of that surface, how it's behaving on that side surface there. And now if I go do a flattened form, and there it goes, right? It's just pretty orthogonal in there, right? So one minor enhancement there in sheet metal itself. So small enhancements, but in different multiple areas, right? Surfacing, if you do surfacing, they got the align draft command, very useful when you do Freestyle, right? That's included in the base package again, right? We used to have align tangent, align curvature, etc. when you're trying to marry a highly organic geometry with the existing plane or surfaces, but then we never had the ability to do an align draft for like a parting line situation like this, right? So for that, they got a nice little enhancement there, wherein if I go to maybe let's see if I could open up a design here, right? So if I go and edit definition, this particular parting line, right? Or this geometry was done with Freestyle, right? So Freestyle, again, it's available for all of you. It's a subdivisional based modeling. Those have not used it, right? So there, I'm just going to add an edge, right? So maybe to the midpoint here, to the midpoint, I just want to go to the midpoint. I'm just adding right in the middle here. There it goes. And one more in the middle. And now that having done that, I should be able to just do a shift, select, and grab that guy. And I should be able to go, the new one is this align with draft. And I want to use this curve as a reference, right? The parting line curve that I have. And I could select the plane off of which the angle should be measured. So just to make it a little more apparent, I'm going to just give it a 30-degree angle so you could see it better, right? So it's kind of controlling, it's maintaining that angle along that parting line, right? So, or it could be a situation where you might want to add, for example, another situation here where I have solids in here, but this is done with Freestyle. And if I go to the Freestyle geometry here, I can just go and say I want to, again, do this draft alignment here. All the other alignments were there on this, right? And then maybe to the plane, and I can just control the angle, right? So maybe a 10-degree draft all around from that plane, and then it's nice to have that additional control of the draft when you do these type of features in here. So, okay, so we're I know we're closing to the halfway mark here, but just some basic ones in here on the part modeling side. Now moving on to detailing and MBD, right? Model-based definition. I'm sure many of our customers you might have heard of MBD, and many of our customers are in the process of at least investigating or getting into model-based definition, where they try to define everything required to define that model in the 3D model itself, where the drawing becomes optional. So any enhancements moving forward by PTC will be applicable to the 2D drawing and the 3D MBD annotations that you'll be applying, right, if you were to start implementing MBD, right? So one nice thing in the drawing is they have like configurable tooltips here, right? It's pretty nice when you hover over it. It gives you some more information of the view. You can finally have drawing columns, just like the model tree columns in part and assembly mode with additional information, right? Summary view, right? You can sort the tree. Some usability enhancements, I would say, in the drawing mode. For example, if I go to the drawing here, and let's see if I could open up a drawing that I've already done here. So there it is, right? So if all these, typically they'll have a tooltip. Sometimes over the GoToMeeting, I've seen it and it doesn't come up, but you can just go select any of them. And if I go a summary for view, and it gives you additional summary. They also have options to control the tooltip. If I go to options, they literally included a new thing under options called detailing, where you could control the sorting of the tree and what do you want to show in the tooltip there, right? At scale, simplified rep, etc. When you have the tooltip to come up when you hover over it, or you can just go tree columns and add, like, let's say child view, parent view, simplified rep. I thought those are all very nice, where in one go, in a very complex drawing, I can look at all those referenced ones instead of going to each view and getting more information, right? I can also say I want to sort it, right? Sort this by parent views, or sort it by, by view model. So here in this case, I have an assembly model, the brake caliper, and I also have a part, as you can see, and it sorts it, right? I also have more information about the view itself. I could say, child views, and it brings up another box in here, and very complex drawings. You might have related views. I could just go to that view, and it literally switched sheet, if you notice that, from that sheet one, right? So overall, some good ones, I thought. On the usability side, you can always say I don't want any of those and just leave it, with the default one that you're currently used to. But some couple of nice ones on the drawing side there, okay? And then a few other things like, hidden line removal, right? Moving arrow with name. There's a config option that'll control that now. Adding multi-leader ones like, perpendicularity, or perpendicular notes, right? We used to have the ability to add additional leaders, but now you can quickly add it for GTOLs notes and balloon notes. You can add multiple normal or tangent leader. Very, very useful. So for example, this may not be the right model, but let me anyway quickly show that. I would probably, let's say I want to add a GTOL maybe in a part, but let's assume there's a part. I've added that normal condition right there, but now I can just go add leader, which you could do before, but I could keep doing that, right? Multiple add leaders. So it's applicable for notes, balloon notes, etc. So it's a minor little enhancement, I thought, that would benefit, right? So let's go through a few more in here. And some dimensioning sides, right? The ordinate dimensions. If you do like a flat state of a sheet metal part, you use ordinate dimensioning. The cleanup is a lot better with the new detail file option. And then they have an option to control the witness line delta when you have intersection dimensions there, okay? Also for both, ISO standards and ASME standards, PTC supports the latest version of it. So why ASME for here in the United States, we use, 14.5 from, is it 2009 or 2018, you get to control that, right? Same with the ISO style, right? The latest versions are supported now. So you will see, sometimes you'll get an error when you use it. You can always switch the standards. They have new notes. So they're all trying to be, from a compliance standpoint, even little things like adding multiple notes to the GTOL was there before, but how to space them out, right? That's a new thing. So they're slowly adding new enhancements there, which is nice to see that they're up to date on the latest versions of those standards. Rendering, you can finally change the plane of the reflection plane, right? You can use any plane or a datum plane or a face. Before you had to go and use the default planes only, but now, I have this assembly here. I could choose that surface as my rendering environment. For example, if I go to an assembly like this, I have the assembly in here, and whenever I go shading with reflections, you could see how it's, and if I go, right, turn on some ambient occlusion or scene background, or if I go and say perspective view and all that good stuff, right, you could see how it's literally reflecting off of that face, of that geometry, right? And to change it, right, before you do the final rendering, now you can go to your scenes, right? And when you do edit scene, and if you go to your environment, right, in there, you see how you have the floor plane. I could just go to the arrow and say, you know, this should be this surface, for example, or it could just be this surface. And literally, I switched that to any geometry I want. It's a, you know, better control, I thought, rather than just figuring out the planes, etc. Right? So that is a nice little enhancement, I thought. If I go back to any of the parts in here, or maybe even open the assembly, you know, you should be able to do it on any of them. Actually, let me just, yeah, we'll just keep going here. We'll just cover a little bit of multi-body here for the rest of the presentation here. Let me just go. Okay. One thing on a Render Studio is if you do the mannequin extension, right, now you can also render the mannequin vision window. As you can see here, right, the mannequin's vision is what is shown in this detailed, you know, in this view in here, and we can render that as well, right? And you can pause rendering, which is not possible before, right? Maybe you want to do some checking or some other applications you want to get to, you can just pause it, resume it, right? And if you do augmented reality design share, AR design share was introduced in Creo 4 and 5. Up to 10 experiences. Now they support combination states. That's a new enhancement. Okay, so with that, let's get to the one of the biggest one they introduced, PTC introduced in Creo 7.0. It is a major update. You know, it's the R&D side of PTC. This is where there's a lot of investment done to make this enhancement between 6 and 7. This is one of the highlights, which is the multi-body design. We've also done separate webinars on this, so feel free to check it out in our webinar area or archived areas. But those who are not familiar with this, right, some of the other CAD systems had this capability, and PTC now allows multi-body design mainly to help you with specific situations, right, to do Boolean addition, subtraction, or it could be for simulation environment. It could be for injection molded parts where I have like multi-shot, multi-material injection molded part right here, you know, where I might want these two all done in one single part, but then I can extrapolate it to different parts if required. Maybe, you know, I want to do that little cooling channel within that. How do I do that? Rather than doing it as an assembly and creating all that external references, maybe this is another option, right? So starting Creo 7, when you start a new part or even an existing part, you will see the bodies by default, you know, which can be filtered off if you don't prefer using it. And you can do Boolean addition, subtraction, one single component. You could have multiple bodies. You could say, what is a contributing body? What is the active body? You could have even lightweight bodies if you would like. Or when I say lightweight body, you could just say that's a construction body that shouldn't participate in the mass property calculations, split body. So several use cases actually that I've listed here, right? Whether it's simple Boolean operations, or it could be in additive manufacturing, generative design, simulation, right? Several places, you know, all the way, even in the windshield visualization, in the Creo view, you can access those bodies actually, right? Here are some more examples, right? I'm using the intersect body to create this geometry. Here also I'm using the intersect just to generate that complex curve. So I'm using it almost like a tool, right? Normally you would do this with surfacing, with a lot of geometry features, but it's a lot easier, right? So multi-body design, here's another one, right? It's an injection molded multi-material part where I have the main body and then the overmold body, and you could use UDFs, and so very different use. I mean, a lot of use cases, I would say, and there's something included in the base package, and all of you should be able to do it, right? Master model technique. You're all used to doing assemblies and then parts, but how about on simpler assemblies? Could we just do it in one body and then extrapolate it, or you know, export it to different parts, right? And multi-body is supported in the 2D drawing, right? For mass properties, you could have different material properties. In your repeat region, it's supported, right? It's also supported in sheet metal, flexible modeling extension. In model check, you can have the system check for multiple bodies, materials for each bodies, you know. So here's a sheet metal part where I have a solid body inside of that sheet metal part, as you can see, right? It's also applicable in data exchange, right? When you bring in files from other CAD systems, they may have bodies, and we can recognize those bodies now since we have an option under import profile to say, identify those multiple bodies there. And finally, on the windshield side, it's still going to be one part. We're not creating multiple WT parts or a structure here yet, but in the new releases, it might be enabled. But as of now, your Creo view will show both those multiple bodies, as you can see here. I have a cylinder, fluid, and a control right in here, 3 bodies, and I'm able to see that in Creo view, okay? So a lot of use cases, right? And for example, in fluid flow simulation, I'm using a plunger body to control that opening, for example. It could be done in one part, one for the outside body, one for the fluid volume, or it could just be used in additive manufacturing that I already showed you with that lattice structure. It could be used in generative design, right? So several use cases actually, but just to quickly run through a few examples before we do the Q&A session here. On the very basic side, right, I just have some sketches already done. Whenever you create a new part in Creo or open an existing part, you're going to get these bodies, right, as you can see here, right? If I expand that body, there's one body by default. Every part has one body, right? And let's say I'll go to I do my Shift S to start grabbing sketch regions. Remember that was introduced in Creo 5, where I can grab sketch regions, right? I can just grab multiple regions and all that, right? So I'm just selecting all these multiple regions and I hit extrude, right? If I go into, let's see, I just grabbed let's go do a quick extrude on these and there it is, right? So I'm going to just extrude a very simple shape here. And right now, if you look at the extrude here, it's contributing to this body, right? It's still one body, and so far nothing new. I'm just going to go say, let's keep adding additional ones. Maybe we'll just kind of drill a hole here, right? Or just, I've done as a whole feature, but just since the sketch is done, I'm just going to extrude it through right there and going to do a couple more. There it is, right? So done. So far, all these 3 features are contributing to this one, right? Now I'm thinking maybe I want to add another body. So when you add features moving forward, right, in Creo, when you create these features, right, you have an option called body, and this is available in sweep and extrude and revolve, where you could either attach it to another body after creating an empty body, or you could say, I want to just create a new body out of this, right? Or this should be contributing in a new body. And you see how I have 2 bodies now, wherein extrude 4 is contributing to this body, the others are contributing this one, right? So that could have its own material, its own color, etc., right? So I should just be able to just go set up some, so we'll just go to that body here. If I can query select to that body right there, and so it's 2 different ones, right? So the way it's working right now is what is active, right? This is the active body right now, and I can do Boolean addition, subtraction. I can do split body. All those Boolean operations are all possible in here, right? I could keep adding additional ones here. So maybe I want to go extrude it. It's cutting it by default, but maybe I want to say don't remove it, right? I just give it a specific size there, right? For example, or maybe I could just go, let's see if I could just add a couple more. Right in here, I can just go add a few more of those. And let's go say don't remove material, right? I could just add those. Up snap to that point and, so et cetera, right? So I'm able to add multiple bodies and everything, but the thing is, when I do let's say the bottom one, the main body is what I'm going to set it as active. If I create things like shells and all that, right? If I want to do a shell on this surface, you see, it's allowing me to just do shell this, and I'm able to work on it independently of that. And if I do rounds, right, the rounds will get added here and here as separate bodies there, right? And of course, I can always merge at any time, right? I can just say, I want to merge this. The modifying body is this one here, and they're all one shot. So it's more like you're using it for much more flexibility in your design. So maybe things like if I were to go back and show you much more, much better example here, maybe imagine I want to design something like this, right? So I know this is a final one. It looks like not a complicated part, but this pattern itself, sometimes we may have to do a lot of workarounds where do some quilts or surfacing for all that. How do I do that with this new multi-body design methodology, right? I could just go, for example, I have a very simple part here, right? You could see how, simple extrude, couple of rounds that we added, we shelled it, obviously, right? Pretty straightforward. Did a few more extrudes and added a round in here in the corner, and that's it. Now, if I want to go, let's say, to one of the mid planes here and add an extrude, right? I like this half view or show, clip the cross section that they introduced in Creo 4, where I can clip it, right, as you can see. That's pretty nice. Anyways, let's say I want to add a solid, right? I want to add some solid here. We'll just give it a specific, just give it a quick, some size in here. And maybe I want to go add a dimension from this one to this one here. And let's say I want to set it to a specific size there too. All right, so there it is, right? I have, now when I'm creating this, right, I can just obviously go use this in Creo 6. They introduce all these, you know, a lot of usability enhancement. I'm able to go symmetric right from here, sort of doing right clicks. And so I did a very simple extrude here, making it really long so you can go through all that. And I'm going to use this to remove material later on. But I can just say I want this as a new body. So you see that it's a different color, it's a new body there. So I got two bodies in here, right? Body 1 and body 2. I could just say maybe I want to throw in a quick chamfer in here, right? I want to just throw in a chamfer on these two guys, maybe set it to, we'll see some value there. We'll just go set it to some smaller value there. There it goes. And there it is, right? That's the shape I'm looking for, right? You can see that. That's what it should be, remote. So now I can just go do your usual groups and all that. And when I do the group, let's say I'm going to go pattern this guy. Maybe we'll just, you know, again, you know, all the pattern options right in here. So in Creo 6, you know, what are the different patterns? Rotational pattern, directional pattern, everything is right in here, right? You don't have to touch the dashboard at the top as much as you can, right? So, and then if I go to this one here, let's say 2.5 is going to be my increment. And maybe I want to have about, let's see here, about 20, 25 odd, right? Just so that it goes beyond that, you know, there it is. So I've created so many of them, and they're all separate bodies as we speak. And now maybe I can just go add an extrude on that one, but this time maybe I want to go offset, right? And maybe we'll do a loop, right? We can do an offset loop on this guy here, and let's say a negative 0.5 value or something like that, right? I've done the offset. I just wanted to create a region inside, as you can see, right? And maybe I want to extrude it. We'll just say for a specific size here, right? And then when I do this, again, you know, you see so far it was adding material. What happens if I remove material? If I remove material, you see how it automatically picks up that current body to be removed from. So I could just say, you want to remove this one, so keep this one, and now you see what I'm getting at here. I should just be able to do a simple, go to the body and do a subtract, right? And I could say subtract using the second body, and there it goes. So, you know, yeah, you could have done this in Creo 6 multiple different ways, right, with all the old release, but, you know, the number of features I got it done and how I'm using that as a tool is a big takeaway here with these kind of examples. So here's another one in here. If I go to a Boolean example, just a couple more examples here. If I were to just go and, you know, let's say I want to create that sweep as a separate body. So if I go and say I want to do a sweep through this, and maybe you know, I'm just going to do a quick circle here with just some size in here. We'll just go set it to a specific value. But let's say I hit OK out of this, and you know, maybe I also want to make sure it's going through, it's creating a new body for that. And you see how it was able to create a new body, and you know, I can just go to the colors and everything. I can just say assign a different color to that particular body. So I have two bodies in here, right? So that's the body 13 that I want a different color in here. And I know right now it's having interference, right? If I go look at my show interference in my cross section, or maybe do a little edit definition of the cross section. I'm sure all of you have used the show 2D view that PTC introduced in Creo 2.0, right? So remember that, where you're able to go and select, right? If I go and, you know, translate that, and as I'm doing that, if I say show interference, and you can see how it shows interference, and we don't want that, right? And we can have different cross-section properties and hatch styles for that too, but now this is where I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to go to the main body and say, let's subtract, and using this. But when I subtract it, it gets consumed by default. In Creo, in 7.0.10, in the next date code, we'll have a config to control it, but you could just go keep bodies. I want to keep that body, and now there shouldn't be any interference, right? If I show interference, I don't see that red in there, and you know, and if you really think about it, we could even use it for, even generating complex geometry. For example, let me just hide some of these main geometries. See how I'm using a base part here, and I'm also creating, let's see here, I'm going to go create there's an extrude, a couple of, there it is, right? The way that I created, let me turn off that interference for a second here. There it is. The way I created even that 3D curve is I used two bodies, right? It's almost like like a construction geometry that I'm using here. I created a couple of patterns, right? Maybe mirrored it, and maybe I'm going to add a couple of rounds and, extrude. But now all I have to do is I go back to this curved base that I used, right, just for constructing that geometry, and I should be able to just go and say intersect, right? I could just say intersect with this, and you see what I got, right? I've already done this, so I'm not going to do this, but you get the idea here where I can use it for intersecting, and now it's just, you could just go and grab that full edge, right? You could just go create a composite curve off of that entire edge. And the most important thing, after getting what I want, I'm going to remove that body. So the body is no longer there, actually, all that I use. So it was just used to do this. So it's an alternate way of, instead of using surface modeling and quilts and all that, this is just an alternate way. So a lot of use cases for this. And then, of course, we did the sweep, and we subtracted that from the other model that I've hidden now, right? There it goes, right? So yeah, several different use cases like this in the multi-body design, right? Like Boolean addition, subtraction, even data exchange, right? I have a SolidWorks part that I'm going to open. That might have bodies, but before I open, I go to my options, right? And I say data exchange. And I'm going to say, okay, for whenever I import SolidWorks files, right? So when I go import a SolidWorks file, I want to make sure that the topology is set to import multiple bodies. So if that CATIA or SolidWorks part or non-Creo alien file has multiple bodies, I want to access that, right? That's what I'm telling here. So now if I go, let's say I open that SolidWorks file here. So if I go to, let's see if I can pull it in that SolidWorks file here. It's going to come through with those bodies, So if I look at this file, right, this cool sunglass file here, the bodies that they had done, right, and the glasses, the frame, and the nose pad, they're all coming in intact. And if I were to go and redefine the import feature and go to import data doctor, it will give you even the quilts related to each body, as you can see here, right? That's one body, and I'm able to hide each body and et cetera, right? So applicable in data exchange and, in simulation, we'll go over a few of the advanced tech in the next webinar, but there's so much additional, so much of use cases. Maybe if I could show one last one on this injection molded part right here, if I could open up an assembly or a part actually. There it is, right? You can see the main body and then the overmold. So that is one single part right here that I have, right? The housing and the overmold, right? And again, you could use bodies for the construction as a construction geometry to remove or add material. At that time, I'm going to just use a user-defined feature or UDF here, wherein I have a UDF wherein I've created it in such a way that if I select, and I'm going to place it in a coordinate system here, and I'm going to select the top surface and the bottom surface, and the main body, see, I'm able to select bodies in my UDFs, so it can be used as a reference as well. So I'll just do this, and I'll kind of show you how it is done. So if you see this, if I look at my cross-section, activate that, there it is, right? So the way that was done, if you think about it, if I go back to my group feature, right, it's the part of that UDF is to first do the extrude cut, pretty straightforward, right? And then add that extrude, and then another extrude, right? And then the round of all that in the UDF, and then this is when the body comes in useful, right? I'm doing the sweep of that, the body subtract to make sure there's no interference like last time, and imagine, how much you could automate this when you use UDFs also, right? So, okay, so that's just a very, very high-level overview. I know a very quick one on multi-body design that I thought I should quickly go over. There's, like I said, there's so much more like in additive manufacturing and simulation. We will be covering these in a separate webinar, but Before we look at the questions in here, I thought, just to give you an idea, some of you who may be already using Creo 7 or already have it installed, there's what's new documentation from Creo, right? You can go File, Help, Reference, and you have what's new documentation. You have several tutorials, right, from PTC Help Center as to what's new. These are the areas. I went through not everything, but some of the core areas that's available in the Help Center. And there's, README documents. If you go to PTC's knowledge base, you can access what are the config options that change, for example, between Creo 7 and 6. Some of you who might be an admin, that's what you're interested in, right? We don't want the entire list. Tell me what's changed between each release, for example, right? Hardware notes, all that is available. And for those customers that use Windchill PDM Link to manage your files, right? This is just a snapshot of the release compatibility between Creo 7 as to where it's supported in 11.1, a specific a date code and CPS, right? The critical patch set, and then the 11.2 and 12.0 are supported. But again, all these you can also get it in the knowledge base. I thought I should just mention that here. So I know we went through a lot of information here, but all our webinars are recorded and they are archived in our YouTube channel. So if you go just Google TriStar Incorporate YouTube, there will be those videos are available. It's also available in our website. If you go to tristar.com or just call us, right? If you go to tristar.com, there's a resource center and there's a CAD resource center, and that's where you have all these archived as well. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to just take a quick look at some of these questions that we have here. Let me just, I think the questions are still coming in. We'll try our best to cover as much as we can. Let me just see here. Okay, so the first question, let me just read them aloud one by one. Okay. For additional leader for GTOLs, notes, etc., can this be done in the model or is it only in the drawing? That's a great question. You should be all the enhancements, Nick. That's a good question that I showed you that normal leader demo. All the enhancements I showed in the drawing mode is applicable to the MBD or the 3D mode as well, right? Remember the model-based definition it's the big area these days. So any enhancements you see is applicable to both sides. So the answer is yes. The next question, are Creo 7 created parts backward compatible with other versions of Creo? Opening a part in Creo 5 showed as an imported let's see here, as an imported feature instead of revolves extrudes. Okay, so yeah, they're not. So Nick, PTC doesn't allow you to do a save as of like an AutoCAD, right, where you save as an old AutoCAD version. We don't have that yet. You could of course open an old release file in a newer release, but yeah, we don't have that save as option. So the workaround is to use the GCRI Granite-based cross-release interoperability. There's a plugin, but it still doesn't, it just gives you the feature tree. It is really not that useful. And there's also a step option, but yeah, so the short answer is no. Yeah. Does the child view publish to Creo view? Yes, yes, Richard. So I think when you're talking about, let's see here, when you say child view, I don't know if you're talking about the drawing child view that I showed you, or maybe the children in the multi-body design. I'm not sure, but I'm assuming it's the child view that I showed in the drawing columns, right? No, we don't see the child view in Creo view on the drawing, if that's what you're talking about. If it's the multi-body design, multiple bodies, that can be shown in Creo view. The next question, let's see here. Interesting how some UI features in Creo are similar to SolidWorks now. This is good to win over SolidWorks customers, I would think. Okay, there's just a comment there, I think. Let me just see about multi-body. Can you set different materials and report the different materials on a BOM for each body in the part, right? Can we insert a part into another part? How does this affect weldment type features like SolidWorks offers? I can't recall the Creo feature name for structural swept profiles following sketch curves with auto and end trimming joining parts. Okay, great question, Jim. Yeah, I think what you're talking about is the expert framework extension, and now it's called advanced framework extension. Yes, that still is there, and we do support a multi-body, even in AFX, right? When you create those weldment types geometry. Regarding your question on different materials and report different material on BOM, yes, absolutely. So in a 2D drawing, yes, you can absolutely do that. For example, if I'm going to go, I can quickly demo that. If I go to my, let's see, if I go to one of the drawings in here, so if I go to that same body, right, the injection molded, the multi-shot, I mean, when I showed you that example, it's the same one here, right? And you see my repeat region in here, right? I could have different materials, by the way, right? If I open that part by itself first, I should probably show you that. I could go into materials, and each body, as you can see here, the overmold and the housing, right? I'm able to go to each one, and I'm able to assign material. So that's a silicone rubber, right? I'm able to go to this guy and say, that's going to be, the master PTC model material of the part, right? You could do that. And you could call that out in your drawing as well, right? So for your drawing, I'm sure, those who are familiar with the repeat region, if I go to my repeat region and switch symbols, so I have the RPT index, you could say, I want to have the body name list. This is a part, not even an assembly. And I could just go and say the model body name, right? I could probably say, I want to go with the model body, let's see, PTC material, we'll just say material description, we'll just go with the reported material name, right? Or maybe even the mass here, right? I might have maybe a custom one in here, so I'm going to go to model, body, and I say user defined, and I say mass, right, etc. And if I go switch symbols and then update tables, you see what it's doing here, right? I'm able to put that in there. So that is your question. I think yes. In fact, there's even options to show both the material. There's some, good questions there. So let me get back to the questions area here. Let me just go back to the questions. So that is, will the multi-body support family table? Okay, so that's generally, family table is a topic that I would shy away from, depending on, we need to know more as to your current usage of family table before commenting on that. But yes, it is overall, multi-body is supported everywhere, right? Drawing mode, FMX, you name it, right? And everywhere it is supported. The short answer is yes. Let me see. Let's see. So some they've had the audio issues, I think, and hopefully it's okay. Let me get back to, let's see, a few additional questions came up now, I think. Okay, so Richard is asking about the model, right? Creo view. Yes, you can, right? So for example, maybe I'll probably answer that with the demo, Richard. That might help, I think. In Creo view, the one I could quickly demonstrate maybe is if I open this part, right, in Creo, let's see, take out this question. So there's you see, this is the one that has three bodies, right? Cylinder, fluid, and control, right? There are three bodies. And as you can see, if I isolate one, that's just the outer body. I isolate the fluid body. I have the plunger control right there for the controlling, right? There it goes, right? The three bodies are there. Let me unhide these, right? I should just be able to go save as, right? By the way, an assembly or a part like this, the reason I even did multi-body is to do a live simulation, right? So I might, there's fluid capability inside of simulation live now, and that's what I used here, right? So if I go, I've applied a velocity here and an outlet pressure and all that, and that's when I'm able to use this for tracking, for example, velocity, pressure. You could see the fluid flow in Creo simulation live. Maybe I want to go through a cutting plane here. Maybe I'll just show it on the surface, right? We'll just do it on the surface here, right in there. Now, what I could make use of this bodies is, right, I know right now it's in almost like in a very close position, or the plunger is the bottom. I have this open net feature, right, on that body wherein I can edit that body, right? I'm able to move that body, right? And then regenerate. And when I regenerate, can you see the simulation immediately updates, right? It's amazing the quick feedback you're getting, and that's power of simulation live. But my point is, again, I want to drive that point of the usability, or how useful the three body concept is in here, right? I'm not dealing with external reference. I'm not working on multiple components in an assembly. I'm doing that right in one single part. Now, I may want to just export this into Creo view. I might just say save as, save a copy, right? And I might just say, let's put it in the PVZ file. I know those are Windchill, your CAD worker is doing this, right? Your CAD worker is sitting and spitting out these viewables, as you know, for every check-in, right? Depending on how it's configured. But I don't have Windchill connected here. I'm just going to mimic this. I'm going to manually add a test PVZ to my desktop here, and that might answer Richard your question, I think. And I think it's been created now. So if I just go out of my let's see here, I have this test PVZ, right? There it goes. If I go and open that with, I'll just say Creo View 6.1. By the way, 6.1, the latest, they support that multi-bodies in there. And so here, you're able to see, right, those 3 bodies, and I could say only I don't want to load the cylinder, or, you could see those bodies are exposed in here, right? Those are exposed. Now, can I designate it in Creo, right, and then have WT parts generate a structure? Not yet, right? I mean, you can designate, but that's probably in Windchill 12, or it's coming. It's in the works that I know, but as of now, no. Your Windchill structure will just be one part. We're not exposing that in Windchill yet, but in Creo View, yes. So hopefully that answered your question, Richard. So let me just see. We'll just we're gonna go over a little here, well over an hour here, but let's see if I could go through some last-minute questions here. Can we export MBD views to 3D PDF with the corresponding PMI? Absolutely. Yep. You can do that, right, Andreas? That's a very good question. So let's say in the 3D model, you have those, if you've played around with MBD, you have the ability to add combination states, and there is a way to print all those combination states as separate sheets. And so the answer is yes. Would you recommend using the new fasteners over the existing family tables? The intelligent fastener extension, yes. If you're not play around with it, that's the short answer is yes. We recommend using intelligent fastener extension. However, we understand that we already have an existing library, right? You might want to customize your existing library. There is even a way to, we can help you further on that, to extract those family table, break it down, and then bring it underneath the IFX umbrella, but we can help you more on that, right? So, okay, so next, let's see, does Creo understand different material properties for each body? Yes, it understands material for each body. I think we already answered that. What was a section view you said was introduced in 6? Section view, no, I don't, I think when I was creating the cross section and I show a 2D view, right, that was introduced in Creo 2 itself. It's not in 6. The one that in 6 I was talking about was more the usability, right? Many of the right mouse clicks are just doing a click and it's iconized, and when you're within the dashboard, that's what it is, right? Okay, so let's see, I think we might have, does Creo Simulate understand the different material properties for each body? Yes, that's it. I think we are pretty, let me just make sure. Yeah, I think we got through all the questions here. And I know we went well over time here. Sorry about that, but thanks to all of you for those great questions here. We'll anything that I have not answered, we will definitely we'll definitely make sure to send you an email, or we'll touch base with you on that. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I wanted to wrap up here, and just wanted to remind all of you one more time about the time limited offers that we are running this quarter, right? Let us know, or let your account reps know, or visit TriStar.com for more information on these. And feel free to reach out to us at TriStar.com, or you can contact us at 800-800-1714. Okay, so we really appreciate you taking the time to join this webinar. I know it's a lot of information. You can always go over the recordings here, and so thanks again, and you all have a great rest of the day. Until we see you soon in the next webinar. Thank you.